Eleanor wiped the sweat from her forehead as the red dust of Kepler 442b swirled around her face. The mining tunnels were always hot, always dark, and always filled with the sound of metal striking rock. She had been working in these depths for as long as she could remember. 300 years. That was how long humanity had been enslaved by the Zafrani Empire. 300 years of digging, of working without rest, of watching her people treated as nothing more than tools. Eleanor was 17 years old, but her eyes held the weight of someone much older. She was strong, determined, and tired of the chains that bound her people. She worked alongside her best friend Catherine, a girl with quick hands and a mind that understood things others could not see. Together with 5 others from their labor group, they descended into Sector 7 that morning. David was there, a man of 20 with muscles like stone. Henry was younger, just 15, but he never complained about the work. Robert was quiet and careful, always thinking before he acted. William was strong but kind, always helping others when the guards were not watching. And young Oliver, only 13, worked hard to prove he was not too small for the mines. The Zafrani overseers stood above them on the metal platform, their crystalline bodies glinting in the artificial light. They looked like living glass, shaped into something that resembled a person but was wrong in every way. The overseers barely glanced at the human workers as the group descended deeper and deeper into the tunnels. To them, humans were simple creatures. Not intelligent. Not important. Just tools that worked until they broke and then were replaced with new tools. The Zafrani believed humans were weak. They believed humans could only do simple tasks. They believed humans could never be dangerous. This was their greatest mistake. The Zafrani had forgotten to erase everything from before the conquest. Eleanor's group worked through the morning, pulling rocks from the earth and loading them into carts. The work was hard and endless. Hour after hour, the same motion, the same pain in the arms and back. But Eleanor's mind was always working, always thinking about escape, about freedom, about what life could be if humanity was not enslaved. Around midday, Eleanor's pickaxe struck something different. The sound was wrong. Not the sound of rock. The sound of metal. She stopped moving and listened carefully. "Catherine," she whispered. "Come here." Catherine walked over quickly, careful not to let the guards see that they were not working. She knelt beside Eleanor and looked at where the pickaxe had hit. Beneath the red dust and ancient rock, something metallic was visible. Something that had been buried for a very long time. Together, the 2 girls began to clear away the dirt around the metal object. They worked slowly and carefully, making it look like they were still mining. David, Henry, Robert, William, and Oliver noticed what they were doing and began to help, all of them moving with purpose but not drawing attention to themselves. As the dust cleared away, they saw something incredible. It was a vault door. A massive door made of metal that was older than anything they had ever seen. And etched across its surface were symbols. Not Zafrani symbols. Human symbols. Symbols from the age of expansion, from the time before the conquest, when humanity had reached for the stars and built great things. Eleanor's heart began to beat faster. This was something the Zafrani did not know about. This was something forgotten. The group worked through the rest of the day, carefully clearing away the centuries of sediment from the vault door. They had to be careful. If the Zafrani guards discovered what they were doing, they would be punished severely. Perhaps killed. But they could not stop. Something inside Eleanor told her that what lay behind this door was important. More important than anything else in the world. As the sun began to set above the mining compound, the vault door was finally clear. Eleanor ran her hand across the ancient metal. She could feel the history under her fingers. This door had been sealed for 300 years, maybe longer. And now, after all this time, humans had found it again. Catherine studied the locking mechanism. It was mechanical, not electronic. It was designed to last forever, to survive any kind of disaster or war. The lock was complicated, but Catherine was clever with her hands and her mind. She found a way to open it. The vault began to hiss as the ancient seals broke. The door moved slowly, grinding as metal that had not moved in centuries began to turn. Inside the vault, darkness seemed to stretch forever. And then, as their eyes adjusted to the darkness, they saw it. A colossal humanoid machine stood inside the vault. It was 50 meters tall, maybe more. Its armor was burnished steel with faint traces of paint still visible. The paint showed symbols that Eleanor recognized. The symbols of humanity's early space program. The symbols of Earth. And written on the chest of the machine were letters. Defender, 7. Eleanor felt tears on her face. She did not remember starting to cry. "They built this," William said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Before the conquest. We built this." Eleanor walked closer to the machine. Its surface was smooth and cold under her hand. Inside the machine, deep in its chest, indicator lights blinked faintly in the darkness. Red lights. Green lights. Yellow lights. The Titan was not dead. It was not broken. It was sleeping. It was dormant, waiting for someone to wake it up. Eleanor looked at Catherine. Catherine looked back at Eleanor. "We wake it," Eleanor said quietly. The other 5 young people gathered around her, understanding what this meant. They were enslaved. They were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to accept their chains. But here, buried in the earth, was proof that humanity was once great. That humanity had built machines of power. That humanity could fight back. Eleanor reached out and touched the cold metal of the machine one more time. "We wake it," she said again, this time with more strength in her voice. And so began something that would change everything. Something that would shake the foundation of the Zafrani Empire. Something that would remind the galaxy why humanity should never have been enslaved in the first place. Catherine's hands moved across the ancient console with surprising confidence. She had always been the smartest among them, the one who understood how things worked even when nobody had taught her. Her fingers traced the symbols on the keyboard, trying to understand a language that was 300 years old. Eleanor stood inside the massive cockpit of Defender 7, looking out through the viewing window at the enormous body of the machine. Even from inside she could feel the weight of it. The sheer size of the Titan made her feel small, but it also made her feel something else. Oh, power. The knowledge that humanity had once created things that were strong and terrible and beautiful. Around them, David, Henry, Robert, William and Oliver worked to clear more debris from the cockpit area. They moved carefully and quietly, aware that at any moment, a guard could come down into Sector 7 and discover what they were doing. If the Zafrani found out about this machine, they would destroy it. They would not allow humanity to have something so powerful. "I think I found it," Catherine said, her voice soft but excited. She pointed to a large button on the console, hidden beneath layers of dust. "Look, the symbol means power. Or activation. I think this is how we turn it on." Eleanor swallowed hard. This was the moment of no return. Once they pressed that button, everything would change. There would be no going back to the old way of living. No more pretending to be content with slavery. No more hiding their true thoughts and feelings. "Do it," Eleanor said. Catherine took a deep breath and pressed the button. For a moment nothing happened. The cockpit remained silent and dark. Then, somewhere deep inside the machine, something shifted. A low hum began to fill the air around them. The hum grew louder and louder until it seemed like the entire vault was vibrating. Lights flickered across the console. Some were red. Some were green. Some were yellow. They blinked in patterns that Catherine could almost understand. The hum grew even louder, and Eleanor could feel it in her bones, in her chest, in her very soul. Then a voice spoke. It was not a human voice. It was electronic, coming from speakers that were built into the machine's chest and head. The voice was calm and steady and somehow kind, despite its mechanical nature. "Defender 7 Tactical Unit online," the voice said. "All systems operational. Identifying creator species. Scanning. Scanning. Human genetics confirmed. Awaiting orders." Eleanor felt Catherine grab her hand. Both girls were shaking, but not from fear. From excitement. From the knowledge that something impossible was happening. "What is your purpose?" Eleanor asked, speaking up so the machine could hear her. There was a pause. The machine seemed to be thinking, searching through its memory banks for information that had been stored 300 years ago. "My purpose," the voice said slowly, "ISTO protect human civilization from all threats. My primary directive is to ensure the survival of humankind. I have been dormant for approximately 317 years. My records show that my last action was to defend Earth from external attack. I am ready to serve humanity again." Eleanor took a step closer to the console. Her voice was steady now, no longer shaking. "Humanity is enslaved," she said. "We are prisoners on this world. We are forced to work without rest. We are treated as less than animals. We are not free." Again there was a pause. The lights on the console blinked faster. The hum of the machine became louder, more intense. "Slavery detected," the voice said. "Human suffering detected. Oppression of creator species detected. This violates my primary directive. I must protect humanity. This means I must end the slavery. I must liberate the humans. Preparing for immediate action. Initiating liberation protocol." The vault began to rumble. Not just a small vibration, but a deep, powerful shaking that came from the very foundation of the earth. The massive doors that had been sealed shut for 300 years began to groan. They moved slowly at first, then faster, grinding and screaming as the ancient mechanisms powered up. "They're coming," Oliver shouted from the entrance to the cockpit. "Zafrani security." They heard the noise. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she gripped the control stick in front of her. She had never flown anything in her entire life. She had never operated a machine more complex than a pickaxe. But somehow, as her hands touched the stick, knowledge seemed to flow directly from the machine into her mind. It was as if the Titan was teaching her what to do. As if 300 years of programming and purpose were guiding her actions. The machine rose. Slowly at first, then faster as hydraulics throughout its enormous body screamed to life. The ground shook beneath the vault. The sky opened up above them as Defender 7 emerged from its underground tomb into the mining complex. Zafrani workers scattered in panic, running away from the massive machine. Some tried to call for help on their communication devices. Others simply ran, their crystalline bodies glinting in the sunlight as they fled. The overseer Vexthor appeared on a catwalk above the compound. He was tall for a Zafrani, and his crystalline body was a deep blue color that indicated his high rank. For the first time in his long life, Vexthor felt fear. Real, genuine fear. He watched as the war titan rose higher and higher, its silhouette blocking out the sun. Eleanor's voice boomed across the colony, amplified by the titan's external speakers. It was her voice, but it sounded different now. It sounded huge. It sounded powerful. It sounded like the voice of something that could not be stopped. "We are no longer property. This ends today." Eleanor felt the weight of those words as they left her mouth. She felt the power in them. She felt the truth in them. And she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The Zafrani had ruled for 300 years, but that time was ending. The age of human slavery was coming to an end. Defender 7 stood tall in the sunlight, its blue optical sensors glowing like stars, and waited for Eleanor to tell it what to do next. The compound was in chaos. Zafrani workers ran in every direction, screaming warnings into their communication devices. Defender 7 stood in the center of the mining facility like a god of war, its massive frame casting shadows across the entire area. Eleanor controlled the machine from the cockpit, Catherine beside her reading data from the tactical systems. There, Catherine pointed to a military installation on the eastern edge of the compound. "That is where they store the weapons." Eleanor moved the Titan with surprising grace for a machine so enormous. Each step was deliberate and controlled. She could have destroyed everything in her path, but she chose not to. She chose to be precise. The weapons storage facility exploded in a ball of fire, but the human residential areas nearby remained untouched. Around the colony, enslaved humans saw what was happening and understood what it meant. David, who had been working in the southern mines, seized a plasma rifle from a fallen Zafrani guard. The weapon felt heavy in his hands, but he knew how to use it. He had watched the guards for years. He had learned their techniques. "Follow me," David shouted to the other workers around him. "We are free now. We are free." Hundreds of humans emerged from their labor assignments and took up whatever weapons they could find. Henry led a group toward the detention blocks where humans who had resisted were kept locked away. Robert organized teams to secure the food storage facilities. William took control of the water purification systems. Young Oliver, despite his age, became a messenger, running between different sections of the colony, carrying Eleanor's orders and spreading the news of liberation. The Zafrani, for the first time in 300 years, found themselves facing an organized enemy. They were shocked. They were unprepared. They had believed themselves invincible, and that belief had made them careless. But Vexthor the Overseer was not entirely careless. Even as the colony descended into chaos, he made his way to the communication station. His crystalline fingers moved quickly across the console, and he activated the planetary distress beacon. The signal screamed out across the galaxy, a desperate call for help directed at the nearest Zafrani military outpost. Eleanor saw the signal being sent on the tactical display. Catherine's face went pale as she read the information. "They've sent a distress call," Catherine said quietly. "The signal is already gone. We cannot stop it." Eleanor stared at the console, watching as the signal traveled through space toward the distant Zafrani Empire. For a moment she felt defeated. They had won the colony, but now the entire Imperial fleet would come. They could not fight the entire Zafrani Empire. Then she understood what she had to do. "Can we destroy the communications relay?" Eleanor asked. Catherine studied the tactical map. "Yes. It's on the northern tower. One shot from the particle cannon and it will be destroyed." "Then do it," Eleanor said. The Titan turned toward the northern edge of the colony. Eleanor could see the communications tower from the cockpit, a tall structure made of metal and crystal. It represented everything that connected the Zafrani to their empire. It represented the chain that kept them enslaved. Eleanor gripped the controls. The particle cannon on Defender 7's shoulder hummed to life, charging with energy. The sound was terrible and beautiful at the same time. For just a moment, nothing moved. The entire colony seemed to hold its breath. Then the cannon fired. The beam of pure energy shot across the sky like lightning. It struck the communications tower dead center. The tower erupted in a spectacular explosion of fire and metal. Pieces rained down across the colony, and a plume of smoke rose up into the sky. Eleanor felt satisfaction wash over her. They could not stop the distress call that had already been sent, but they could stop any future messages. They could buy themselves time. How much time? Eleanor asked Catherine. Catherine was already doing calculations on the tactical system. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she processed the data. The nearest Zafrani military outpost is 7.3 light-years away. Even with their faster-than-light drives, they will need approximately 6 days to reach us. Maybe 7 if they do not push their engines to the maximum. 6 days. Eleanor repeated the number in her mind. 6 days to prepare. 6 days to transform the colony from a prison into a fortress. 6 days for humanity to remember what it meant to fight for freedom. Tell everyone, Eleanor said, her voice firm and clear. We have 6 days. In 6 days the Zafrani will return with their warships. But we will be ready for them. Around the colony the message spread. Workers who had been slaves just hours ago began to work with new purpose. They were not working for the Zafrani anymore. They were working for themselves. They were working for their freedom. David organized combat teams and taught them how to use the weapons they had captured. Henry worked with Robert to create defensive positions around the colony. William and his team began to repurpose Zafrani technology, trying to make it work for humans instead of against them. Oliver ran messages between groups, coordinating the effort, making sure everyone understood the mission. Even the oldest among them, people who had given up hope decades ago, rose to their feet and began to work. They reinforced structures. They gathered supplies. They trained, they fought, they bled, and they refused to surrender. By the 3rd day the transformation was remarkable. The mining colony that had once been a symbol of slavery had become a fortress. Defensive walls were built. Weapons were positioned. Humans stood watch on every corner, armed and ready. By the 4th day, Eleanor stood on top of Defender 7's massive shoulder, looking out at the colony below. Humans moved with purpose. Humans worked together. Humans fought together. Not as slaves. As free people. Vex Thor, locked in a detention cell, watched from a window and felt something he had never felt before. He felt afraid. Not of the war titan. Not of the weapons. He was afraid because he understood for the first time that the Zafrani had made a terrible mistake. They had enslaved a species that was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The sky erupted with light as the Zafrani battle fleet emerged from hyperspace above Kepler 442b. Eleanor was standing in the cockpit of Defender 7 when the sensors detected them. 5 massive heavy cruisers, each one the size of a small mountain. Behind them, a dozen smaller destroyers and countless fighter squadrons. The screens filled with red warning indicators. Catherine's hands shook as she read the tactical information. That is more firepower than we have ever seen before. That is enough to destroy the entire planet. Eleanor felt her stomach tighten, but her voice remained steady. Then we do not let them destroy anything. Launch Defender 7. The Titan rose from the colony, its massive feet lifting off the ground as its thruster systems powered up. The machine had been designed for ground combat, but it could fight in the atmosphere and even in the lower regions of space. Eleanor guided the war Titan skyward, moving faster and faster until the colony below became nothing but a collection of small structures. The Zafrani ships detected the approaching machine immediately. Their weapon systems locked onto Defender 7 and they began to fire. Energy bolts the size of buildings screamed through the sky toward the Titan. But Eleanor was ready. Catherine called out the targeting information, and Eleanor maneuvered the machine with surprising grace. The first energy bolt passed to the left of Defender 7. The second passed to the right. Eleanor rolled the Titan like it was a small fighter jet, not a 50-meter-tall machine. The ancient programming in the Titan's systems responded to her thoughts before she even finished forming them. The machine and the girl had become one. Particle cannon is charged, Catherine said. You have a clear shot at the first cruiser. Eleanor aimed carefully. She had never fired a weapon before in her life, but the Titan showed her how. Her fingers moved across the controls, and the particle cannon on the machine's shoulder hummed to life. A beam of pure energy shot out, faster than light could travel, and struck the first Zafrani cruiser dead center. The cruiser's shields flared bright blue, absorbing the energy. For a moment, Eleanor thought the attack had failed. Then the shields collapsed and the energy beam punched through the ship's hull. The cruiser exploded in a cascade of fire and metal, pieces falling from the sky like rain. On the bridge of the flagship, Commander Exweldar watched in horror as his first cruiser was destroyed. In 300 years of service he had never seen anything move with such speed. He had never seen anything strike with such precision. "Target the War Titan with all available weapons," he commanded, his crystalline voice cold and sharp. The entire fleet opened fire. Hundreds of energy bolts shot through the sky at once, creating a storm of destruction. Eleanor pulled Defender 7 into a spiral, spinning and twisting through the fire. Most of the attacks missed, but some connected. Energy exploded against the Titan's armor, creating brilliant flashes of light. Eleanor felt each impact through the controls. She felt the heat. She felt the shock waves. But Defender 7's armor held strong. 300 years of advanced materials and engineering kept the machine intact. "Second cruiser on your left," Catherine said. "Charging the cannon now." Eleanor adjusted her aim. The second particle cannon blast shot out and struck the second Zafrani cruiser. This ship's captain tried to evade, but there was nowhere to go. The beam pierced through the ship's engines and it began to fall from the sky, spiraling downward toward the planet below. The third cruiser attempted to retreat, but Eleanor was faster. She pushed Defender 7 to its maximum speed, and the Titan shot through the sky like an arrow. The particle cannon fired again and again. The third cruiser was crippled, its hull breached, its systems failing. But Eleanor was not trying to win a military victory. She was trying to send a message. She moved Defender 7 away from the remaining ships and opened a broadcast channel. Her voice, amplified by the Titan's communication systems, filled every Zafrani ship in the fleet. "I am Eleanor of Kepler 442b, she said, speaking clearly and slowly so that every word would be understood. "I speak for humanity. You enslaved us because you thought we were weak. You thought we could not fight back. You were wrong." Eleanor paused, letting those words sink in. She could see on the tactical display that Zafrani commanders throughout the fleet were receiving the message. "This machine is ancient," Eleanor continued. "It was built by humanity 300 years ago, before your conquest, before your empire grew strong. We built this when we were still learning to reach the stars. We built this when our technology was young. And this one ancient machine has destroyed 3 of your modern warships without damage to itself." Eleanor moved Defender 7 slowly through space, letting every ship get a good look at the War Titan. Its armor glowed slightly from the heat of battle, but it was otherwise undamaged. "You have a choice," Eleanor said. "You can leave now and return to your empire with the knowledge that humanity is not prey. You can leave now and tell your people that we are not slaves. Or you can attack us again and discover what else humanity can do. You can attack us again and lose more of your fleet." Eleanor's voice became harder, colder. "We do not want to destroy you. But we will. We will do it without hesitation. We will do it to protect our freedom. We will do it to protect our people." For a long moment there was silence. No weapons fired. No ships moved. Then slowly the Zafrani fleet began to retreat. The destroyers turned away. The fighter squadrons broke off their attacks. The 2 remaining heavy cruisers that had not been damaged slowly backed away from the planet. Commander Exweldar watched from the bridge of the flagship as his mighty fleet withdrew. He had come to conquer. He had come expecting easy victory. Instead, he was retreating from a single machine piloted by a 17-year-old human girl. Eleanor watched on the tactical display as the ships jumped into hyperspace. Within minutes they were gone. The sky was clear again. The immediate threat had passed. Eleanor realized she was crying. Catherine was crying too. Around them, in the cockpit of Defender 7, alarms beeped and lights blinked, but the machine was safe. Humanity was safe. For now. Eleanor stood on top of Defender 7's massive palm, looking out across the colony of Kepler 442b. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Below her, the colony was transforming. Humans moved through the streets with purpose and direction, but there was something different about their movements now. They were no longer shuffling with the weight of slavery on their shoulders. They were walking with their heads held high. Catherine climbed up beside Eleanor, breathing hard from the effort of climbing the Titan's arm. She carried a portable computer terminal in her hands and she was smiling. Eleanor had not seen Catherine smile like this before. Not in the mines. Not when they were slaves. This was the smile of someone who had hope. "The news is spreading across the galaxy," Catherine said. She showed Eleanor the screen. Messages were coming in from 100 different worlds. On each one, enslaved humans were hearing what had happened on Kepler 442b. They were hearing about the War Titan. They were hearing about Eleanor and Catherine and David and Henry and Robert and William and Oliver. They were hearing that humans could fight back. They were hearing that humans could win. "What about the Zafrani Empire?" Eleanor asked. "They are calling an emergency meeting of the High Council," Catherine said. "The retreat of the fleet has caused massive confusion throughout the Empire. Some of their commanders want to send a larger force to crush us. Others are afraid of what happened to the First Fleet. The Empire is divided." Eleanor nodded slowly. She understood what this meant. The Zafrani Empire had ruled for so long because they had always been united in their belief that they were superior to all other species. Now that belief was cracking. A single machine, piloted by a human girl, had shattered the myth of Zafrani invincibility. "Commander Exweldar has sent a transmission," Catherine continued, reading from the screen. "He says that the Zafrani Empire wishes to negotiate. They want to discuss the future of human slaves across all their territories." Eleanor felt her heart skip. Negotiate. The Zafrani wanted to negotiate. That meant they were afraid. That meant they understood that slavery was no longer sustainable. That meant humanity had a chance. "Tell them yes," Eleanor said. "Tell them we will negotiate. Tell them that humanity demands freedom for all enslaved peoples. Tell them that any world with enslaved humans must be liberated immediately. And tell them that if they refuse, we will remind them what ancient human weapons can do." Catherine smiled and began typing the message into her terminal. Below them, in the colony, David was organizing the construction of new buildings. The old mining facilities were being torn down or converted into research laboratories and learning centers. Humans who had spent their entire lives as slaves were beginning to learn again. They were beginning to remember what it meant to be more than just workers. Henry worked in the medical center, helping to treat the wounded from the battles. His young hands moved with care and precision as he assisted the older doctors. The work was difficult, but Henry felt like he was doing something important. He was healing his people. Robert led teams of engineers through the colony, studying Zafrani technology and learning how to adapt it for human use. The weapons systems were being modified. The energy systems were being improved. Humans were taking the technology of their oppressors and making it their own. William stood in the food distribution center, making sure that every person in the colony had enough to eat. For the first time in 300 years, humans were not hungry. The food was no longer rationed and controlled by the Zafrani. It belonged to the humans now. Oliver ran through the streets with messages from Eleanor, coordinating efforts between different groups. The young boy who had once been forced to work in the mines was now a messenger of freedom. People listened to him. They respected him. They followed his directions. In the detention center, Vex Thor sat alone in his cell. He had been the overseer for 15 years, and he had seen humanity as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. Now he was a prisoner and humans were his guards. The irony was not lost on him. Eleanor climbed down from Defender 7 and walked through the colony. People stopped what they were doing to watch her pass. Some reached out to touch her shoulder. Others bowed their heads in respect. Eleanor felt uncomfortable with the attention, but she understood what it meant. She had given them something they thought they would never have. She had given them hope. As night fell, Eleanor stood in the center of the colony and called everyone to gather. Within an hour, thousands of humans had assembled in the main plaza. Men, women, and children. Elderly people who remembered the world before slavery and young people who had never known anything but chains. "We have won a battle," Eleanor said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "But this is not the end of our struggle. The Zafrani Empire is negotiating with us now, but they will not give us everything we want without a fight. There are still millions of humans enslaved on hundreds of worlds. There are still Zafrani who believe that humans should be their property." Eleanor paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. She saw fear. She saw determination. She saw hope. "But we have proven something important," Eleanor continued. "We have proven that humans are not weak. We have proven that we are not inferior. We have proven that we can build great things. We have proven that we can fight for our freedom and win. And now, other humans on other worlds are hearing this message. They are beginning to believe that they can be free too." Catherine stepped forward and placed her hand on Eleanor's shoulder. David, Henry, Robert, William, and Oliver stood beside them, united. The age of human slavery is ending, Eleanor said. Not because the Zafrani chose to end it, but because we chose to end it. We chose to wake up the Titan. We chose to fight. We chose to be free. And that choice will change everything. The crowd erupted in cheers. People embraced each other. Some danced. Some cried. Some simply stood in silence, trying to understand what it meant to be free. As the night deepened, Eleanor looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, on 100 different worlds, enslaved humans were looking at the same stars. And they were beginning to hope. Defender 7 stood silent in the center of the colony, its blue optical sensors glowing softly in the darkness. The War Titan had been built to protect humanity. And now, finally, it was doing exactly what it was designed to do.